Hello YouTube viewers, and I'm willing to bet that most of you are Gen Coupe owners. In this video, I'll be showing you how to set up your stereo wiring harness for vehicles with the Infiniti Sound System. With this setup, you can retain the USB port, auxiliary port, steering wheel controls, and the factory microphone. So I bought this Joying 7-inch Android stereo. It's nice because it comes with both the standard 20-pin connector and the ISO connector with the 20-pin end already connected to it. But for the sake of this video, I'll be using the standard connector because it is likely that the stereo you have doesn't come with the ISO connector. Here are the tools you're going to need: a soldering gun, a damp sponge, a third hand. If you don't have one, I highly recommend getting one. It makes soldering so much easier. A pair of side cutters, wire strippers, needle nose pliers, and scissors. A multimeter, a small screwdriver set, and a hair dryer or a heat gun. And here's a list of all the parts and materials you'll need. The wiring diagram for the Infiniti Sound System. I found this on Google search and printed it off. The wiring harness from your new car stereo. A wiring harness kit. This one is made by Metra. The part number is 70-7303 and I purchased this from Amazon. A mini ISO connector. I purchased this from AliExpress.com. If it comes with one, the external microphone that comes with your new stereo. A male end of a USB connector with screw terminals in the back. You can get this on Amazon. A pin terminal connector kit, also available from Amazon. A 3.5mm stereo jack. This is optional depending if your stereo has an auxiliary input. A roll of black 18 gauge wire. A bunch of heat shrink in different sizes. Rosin core solder and flux. Alright, so what I like to start with is the heat shrinks. Mine comes in a kit like this. It's very handy. And all you need to do is grab your two connectors right here and see which wire is the thicker one. So it looks like this is the thicker wires here. You just gotta find the heat shrink that will go over the wires itself. So that one's too small, and this one will just fit. So if yours come in a tube this length, you'll probably want to cut it to about 3 centimeters long. With mine, I'll just have to cut it right in half, like so. A little bit more over here. There we go. And you're gonna need about 26 of them. So now we'll get ready to solder our stuff, our wires. Let's get some stuff ready here. So you need your sponge, soldering iron, or your gun, which is right here. So gotta plug it in. Now, if you haven't used your soldering gun for a while, or if your tip is actually dirty, I highly recommend cleaning it off. So just gotta heat it up and just clean off the tip. Get some flux. Now I use liquid flux, but you can actually use like the paste if you want. Or some there. You have to do is just put the flux on the tip of your gun. So, heat it up. Get some solder and tint the end of it, like so. Now that we have our soldering iron ready to go, we're gonna start with the speaker wires. So all you have to do is find a 4-wire set, which are these wires here. First thing you want to do is put your heat shrink over top. So I'll just start with this green wire here, like so. Take the end off, and you grab the other connector and find the green wire that you're gonna do. So this is a solid green wire. It's gonna have, each set will have a solid wire and solid color wire and a stripe color wire here. So green and black for this one, and then green on this one. So we're just gonna work on the solid green right now. And looks like it's gonna be this guy. Take the end off. Then what you want to do is flay the ends of your wire. Might actually be a little too long, so I'm just gonna strip it down a little. There we go. Flay it. Now you just want to put them together. Like that. And give it a little twist. Like that. So now what you want to do is grab your third hand. So you want to position your wire into the clamps. Make sure they're still together. Like that. So before you solder, just make sure the heat shrink is not in the where the heating area is, or it'll melt and it's going to be a pain to fix that issue. So you want to grab a little flux, put it on, your soldering. Heat it up. Make sure you clean your tip again. And tint. There you go. So this should be soldered together now. Nice solid connection, just like that. And then what you want to do is slide your heat shrink over. Then you grab your heat gun or your hair dryer. Just heat right over the heat shrink and it'll shrink it right down. So a little bit of a epic fail there. I guess my hair dryer wasn't hot enough or to get hot quick enough. So your other alternative is a lighter. There you go. Just shrink it down. Nice and close, but not too close. And it should shrink it down like that. And nice, perfect connection. So now all you have to do is do the remainder of the speaker wires, and then we'll move on from there. Once you have your speaker wires done, you should have 5 wires left on your ISO side of the connectors. So you have your ACC power wire, the illumination wire, your power antenna wire, and your constant or battery power wire. And then you have your ground wire. We're gonna leave the ground wire for the last step to be connected, because we have to modify this wire for other things that I'll mention later. So we'll go ahead and attach these wires, or solder these wires first, these 4 wires. So I just finished soldering the power wires and the antenna wire and the illumination wire here. Next thing we're going to work on is the accessory wires for all the accessories that we're going to hook up. And for that, we're going to move on to the mini ISO connector. Now the metric kit that you get will come with the mini ISO like this, and it only comes with the amp trigger wire as shown here. But because we want to retain all of the other accessories, the microphone, the auxiliary port, USB jack, and the microphone, we're gonna need this mini ISO connector that I bought from AliExpress. This will come with all the wires and the extra wires for other stuff for other cars, obviously. So what we need to do is actually eliminate all the wires that we don't need. So the first thing we're going to do is we're gonna cut off the end that we don't need, which is this end right here. We go ahead and cut it right off with side cutters. So in order to take the pins or the wires out that you don't need, all you need is flathead mini screwdriver. And all you need to do is take the tip of your screwdriver and put it right on top of the connector pin in the little slot there. I'll use that one as an example. You just got to push it down in, and it should release the wire that you're trying to get out. Oop. There you go, just like that. So we're gonna refer to the guide and remove all of the pins that we don't need. Now that we have all the unnecessary pins out, we will work on the USB connector. On the USB connector that I purchased from Amazon, it'll show you what each terminal is for. So here we have the negative power, data positive, data negative, power positive, and the sleeve, which is this right here, and we're not going to use that. So all we need to do now is look up the wiring diagram and find the USB wires. So here are the 4 USB wires that we need. And all we need to do is connect the USB connector to it. You start out by stripping the wires about 5 millimeters off of it. Give the end of the wires a twist. Insert the wires to the back of the connector according to the wiring diagram, and make sure you secure it with the screws on top of the terminals. So now you can check and see if you wired it correctly by using a voltmeter. You just gotta set it to continuity. So first we'll test the USB data negative, which is 3-2. That would be this one right here. And data negative. It works. Next one is USB data positive, which is 3-4. And that would be this one right here. And data positive. That's good. And we have USB ground, which is 3-5. It's the one beside it. And that's good. So the last one is 3-7, which is this one right here. And that would be the positive. And it's good. So we hooked everything correctly. The next connection we're going to work on is the 3.5mm auxiliary jack. We're going to do first is cut it right in half. So then what we want to do is find a heat shrink that will fit over the entire wire. So I believe this one will fit just over it. Yep. So now what we want to do is just reference it to see where about halfway is for the heat shrink. So we'll say it's right about there. And you want to just score the wire just a little bit before the halfway mark. So move that out of the way so we can just see a little better. So we'll say right about there. So you want to be careful not to cut into the wires that are inside. So it's right about there. And there you go. Now what you want to do is put the heat shrink on. Make sure all the wires are threaded through. There you go. So something like that. Because our wires are so thin, we won't be able to cover the solder joint with heat shrink. Like, we won't be able to find a small enough heat shrink to cover the joint. So what we're gonna do is staggered our wires so that we can cover all of it with one big heat shrink, which is the one that we put on earlier. So one thing you have to look out for is when you're soldering, is try not to have it too hot close to the next wire, like right here. So this might be cutting it close to shorting out. So I'm gonna put the heat shrink over it anyways and see if it will short out by testing with the multimeter. So now what I want to do is test and see if any of the wires are crossed. If it is, then I'm just gonna have to cut that section off and start over again. So ground is good. Now for right. They're all good. Now we're gonna work on the microphone jack. So this is pretty much the same process as the 3.5 millimeter auxiliary jack. So what you want to do first is cut off the microphone jack right here. Just make sure you have a good length of wire. So right about there. And you won't need this part anymore. And again, you want to cut the sleeve off. Again, make sure you don't score the inside wires. Right there. Maybe a little bit more. So I accidentally cut a little too much, but this may be enough to make it work. And it looks like this wire has a internal sleeve, so we'll have to strip that off too, like that. So I'm assuming this outer wire is going to be your negative, and then this will be your positive. I'm just going to test it out with the multimeter to see which is which. So I'm just going to test to see which wire is to what part of the connector it is. So I'm going to assume this is going to be negative, which is this part here, and it is, and this one will be your positive, which is right there. So once you get to this point, you have two options to connect your wires together. So option one, obviously what we've been doing is solder the wires together. Option two is using pin connectors like this to connect your wires. And I'll tell you why there are two options. So option one, soldering your wires together. If you're absolutely sure that you're never gonna upgrade your stereo system again, you can definitely solder your jack together. Option two is the pin connectors. The reason why you want to do that, and I'll use my current setup as an example. Right now in my car I have a Pioneer stereo system. Their microphone jack is actually a 2.5 millimeter jack. This one here is actually 3.5 millimeters. So I know in the future I may upgrade my stereo again. So I want to make it able to be able to switch up the connectors. So if you solder it, it's going to be a little bit tougher to get it off again. But with the pin connectors, you can just simply unhook it and then put the other connector on. So to ensure that I have a good connection, I'm actually going to strip my wires again. Cut that off. That's better. So now what you want to do is find a heat shrink that will fit over that wire. Actually, I'm gonna skip that because we're using connectors. We're not gonna need a heat shrink as of yet. So for your jack side of the connector, you're gonna use the pins. So this is what it would look like. This is your pin side. Okay, so what you want to do is we'll work on the negative wire first, which is this right here. Twist your wires so they're bunched together, nice and tight. And then you want to put your wire so that it's just inside the sleeve of the pin, like that. Now normally you would have like a crimper tool, but because they're so expensive, I decided not to get one. So what you can do is you just use a needle nose pliers and just pinch the crimps down. So you have like a couple of tabs here. So you do the one side first. Like so. And you do the other side. And there are back tabs too. So once it's on the wire, just remove it off of the tab. Like that. Then you want to do the same thing with your positive wire. So you want to just strip the sleeve just enough so that it'll fit onto the wire. So just for safe measure, I think I will actually put the heat shrink on. Hopefully it'll go through. Yep. So now you need to get the barrel of the connector. So as you can tell, there's like a little arrow indicated on the connector itself, or sorry, on the barrel itself. So that arrow indicates positive. So you want your positive pin to go onto that arrow. So this is your negative here, and this is your positive. So you just want to insert your positive pin into the slot with the arrow. So now I'm just gonna work on getting the negative pin out. There you go. That's as far as it'll go. So now I'm just gonna slide the heat shrink over the wires like that. And just shrink it down. So this side of the connector is done. Now we're gonna work on the harness side. So we'll need our wiring diagram again to find the microphone wires on the harness side. So it looks like it's pin 1-1 and 1-2, which are these two wires right here. So once you find your wires, you just want to strip it enough so that the again, the wires will go into the pins. So now we look at the wiring diagram again, and just to make sure get the right pins going into the right connector. So again, the arrow is positive, so you want to put the positive sleeve into the positive slot. So 1-1 is positive, which is this one right here. Yeah, I almost forgot. We're gonna use heat shrink again. That. That's positive. It's negative. There we go. So now you want positive to positive, so you'll just have to flip one over, and it should be like that. So just before you connect them together, see if you can find a big enough heat shrink to go over the connectors. If you don't have a heat shrink that goes over the connector that you just made, you can always use just electrical tape to hold them together, because with this, it's actually not a very snug connection. See, it just comes off really easily. So just to make it more secure, you want to just tape it up or use a heat shrink. So again, we're gonna check our work and see if it works. And that is correct. So we're good. So now we're gonna work on the steering wheel control wires, or SWC wires. With the SWC wires, I'm going to use pin connectors instead of soldering them. Again, I'm doing it that way for upgradability. Right now with my Pioneer stereo, it requires a SWC adapter, which takes the steering wheel analog signal and turns them to digital signal. So the stereo understands what buttons you are pressing. With the joining stereo, it doesn't require an adapter because it converts the signal on the stereo itself. So just like the microphone, we're going to put the female end on these wires. So before we continue on with the steering wheel control wiring, we actually have to modify the ground wires first. So this is the ground wire from your stereo harness. This one is to your car. And one more thing you're going to need is the parking wire. So which is this brake wire right here. So with the brake wire, what the brake wire does is it's actually a safety feature for your car stereo to not play videos when your car is in motion. So you actually have to set your parking brake in order to watch your videos. One way to bypass this is to ground it out instead of hooking it directly to your parking brake. With my car right now, with the Pioneer system, simply grounding it out does not work. You actually have to buy another parking bypass adapter in order for that to work. But for cheaper stereos like the one I just got with the joining, you can, from what I've read or view on some other videos, you can just simply ground it out with your ground wire. So for the steering wheel control, we're gonna hook up all the ground wires together. So I'm gonna have to get another piece of wire to hook it up to this end, and then solder all of them together like so, with the extra wire hanging out for the steering wheel control, so we can ground that one out as well. So to start, we're gonna cut a length of black wire. So we'll say that should be long enough. Strip one of the ends. So. And you want to prepare your ground wire here. And your ground wire here as well. Just trim that down a bit. And you need your parking brake wire here, which is this one. We'll strip that as well. And what you want to do is get a heat shrink ready. And you want to put it on this side. Now what you want to do is get all these wires together. So you just want to spread them all out or apart. And you kind of just put them all together. Put it on your third hand. Like so. Then you just want to solder them together. Now you just want to make sure they're all together. Perfect. And you just slide your heat shrink over it. So again, just make sure the heat shrink that you put on will cover all 4 wires. And shrink it down. There you go. So now all you have to do is put a pin on this end of the wire to complete the ground loop for the SWC controls. So now what we want to do is add a pin to the steering wheel control wire, which is key 1 in my case. So now that you have both the ground and the positive wire for your steering wheel control ready, you just have to put a sleeve over them. So once again, you want the arrow for the positive pin. So just be a little cautious here. I have a strand of wire just coming out from the side, so it wasn't clipped all the way. Just cut that little strand off so you don't short anything out. There we go. And just to protect the bare wire here, just find a heat shrink that will go over that. To shrink it down. So now you can bring in the other part of the harness and connect your steering wheel control wires together. So again, just make sure positive goes to positive and negative goes to negative. So it should be something like that. So again, I'm just gonna keep them together by using another heat shrink. So now we're going to test all the ground wires that we hooked up together. And to do that, all you have to do is find the two black wires that are on either side of the harness. So this one here is this one, I believe. And then the steering wheel control wire ground is 2-6, which is going to be this guy here, and on that it should be this one. So that's working. Now for the ISO connector, it's going to be tough because I don't have an extra hand here, but I believe that's this black wire, which is this guy here. So that's working. And we want to test out the parking wire, which I believe, let's see if I can see where it is. I believe it's just right beside it, right here. So they're all hooked up correctly. So for the positive steering wheel control wire, which is the brown wire on the stereo side, which is that. And then on the mini ISO side, it is 2-5, which I believe it's going to be this guy right here. And it's correct. So now there's only one wire left that you need to hook up, and that is your amp trigger wire. Again, I'm going to use the pinning system because I want this to be fully upgradable. That way, again, you don't have to solder it together and then unsolder it or cut it if you decide to change to a new stereo. So we'll work on that right now. This side is the sleeve side. This will be your amp wire right here. Now heat shrink. So now we're gonna do a final amp wire test. It's gonna be this pin here and this one here, and it works. Now that all the wires are connected, all we need to do is clean up our unused wires. The harness that I got, they actually come with little caps like these, so I don't really have to worry about things shorting out in the back of the stereo. But if you do have wires that do not come with caps, what I like to do is actually fold these down, so then just get your heat shrink, just put it right over it, and just shrink them down. Like that. Then I like to bundle them up all together so nothing gets snagged in the back or have loose wires that snag on something. So just grab some zip ties. Down. And we're done. If you find this video useful, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.